As WWE legend Ric Flair once said, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Guardians are trying to go toe-to-toe with the man, but the Dodgers, they're in the ring. They're holding up their belt. The Guardians, they're adjusting their belt. They're just another adjustment away from being an adjustment away.
Tanner Bibee of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Dodgers are not looking to put anybody over in this series. This is Locked On Guardians. Welcome on in. I don't know if we're doing another therapy session or not, but we're here, and I don't think we're going to talk too much about that specific Dodgers game. We're going to talk about where the Guardians need to go next on today's Locked On Guardians. Thank you for tuning in and making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. We cover your Cleveland Guardians, from the majors to the minors and the draft and everything in between. So thank you for being here with us on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Justin Lada. I have been writing about the Guardians minor league system since 2007. You can find some of my work at the News Herald, the Morning Journal, and Next Year in Cleveland. And here 5 days a week with my friend and co-host, the champ, Jeff Ellis.
Thank you for the kind intro. On today, I am Jeff Ellis. So I tried to just roll over because everyone loves intros so much. I am Jeff Ellis. I was one of the first people Locked On brought on to talk about baseball back when they expanded over 60 years ago. Before that, I was a longtime draft and prospect analyst at Scout and 24/7. I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And a big shout out to all of our everydayers. Listen, we've had like almost identical pitching matchups the last 2 days of consistency flips. Both guys gave up 10 base runners. Though I will say Tanner had twice as many hard hit balls today. It's the Dodgers. This is what happens when you face a team that has a higher salary on their injured list than most teams in baseball have on their roster.
Yeah. It's a litmus test, and the Guardians clearly are scoring where they're at on this test. On today's show, we will get into some pitching moves. We'll talk about Shane Bieber getting back on the mound in Arizona, what his timetable to return is. We also have to talk about who is starting the finale today against the Dodgers and gets to go up against Clayton Kershaw and Slade Cecconi's injury. Another one bites the dust, or at least temporarily. We'll talk about when the right time is to make moves and roster adjustments and where this team is going at this point. And then we're starting off today's show just talking about the game and Tanner's adjustments. So Tanner Bibee has been making adjustments all season. You know, he obviously it's kind of been an up and down year for him. A lot of highs and you know, some lows. He has not had this level of inconsistency since becoming a pro, honestly. Since he got to Lake County, he dominated. He dominated in Akron. He got, 3 or 4 starts in AAA? And then 2023 was great. Was in the Rookie of the Year conversation last year. Had some twists and turns, but overall was pretty good and as close to an ace as you're going to get, considering his time in the big leagues at that point. And this year it's been a different story. And I think the lesson I take away at this point for Tanner is and for any of these guys, unless you're Jose Ramirez, all of these guys are works in progress. I mean, like we all are as humans, right? We're all day to day. We're all works in progress.
Nope, I'm perfection as is.
Yes, Jeff doesn't need to change a thing, but everybody else does. So Jeff and Jose Ramirez in a category of their own. Obviously, they're both going to have statues at the end of their careers somewhere. Jeff's will be in a school.
I was going to say on my mausoleum, I was going dark, I guess. Too dark.
Oh, that's really dark.
Too dark.
The end of that's a totally different conversation we don't need to have today. But
yeah,
Tanner's been working through some stuff this year. Like, obviously he was, sick to start the year with food poisoning. That was a mess. And then, he's working in new pitches, the sinker. He's got the cutter, the sweeper, the curveball, the change. He's not had as good success to change. And now he's kind of reworked his delivery to go back to, what was working a couple of years ago. And not to get like super deep into the weeds on this, but like if you watch the start, if you watch his body movements, he's kind of getting a little more tilt in his back shoulder, a little more, hip rotation, and he's trying to drive the ball downhill a little bit better and just get, come over the top a little bit more. He raised, when he had a higher arm angle when he came into the league. It was like I want to say like 57 degrees or something, if you want to be technical. And it's now down to 51. And that was an adjustment he made last year because throwing it higher from a higher release point was hurting his shoulder. So he's dropped that, and he's still trying to, adjust to that. But he's made some other changes to his mechanics to try to get back to where he was a couple of years ago. And it worked last start. And I think that's the thing you have to remember, too, when you're making – that's what they say. It's hard to make these changes in season because you're constantly – you're going out there and you're trying to compete, and you're trying to go out there and get outs and win the game and do whatever you can to give your team a chance to win. And when you're making adjustments like that all the time, it's hard to find consistency. So, this is still a work in progress for him, and you have to remember all these guys are, but unless you're Jose Ramirez, but yeah, they need some consistency from Tanner. He had good innings in this one. He was great in the first inning. He was great in the third inning, and then the second inning was a mess. And the home run to Ohtani, like a backdoor cutter that he hit the opposite field out of the park. Ohtani hits that pitch. Nobody else hits that pitch, especially after a home run. It was like a 430 expected batting average, which is still good, but not insane. So I'm not going to give too much headache to that one. But this is still stuff he's working on, and it's hard to implement adjustments in game or in a game in a season. That's why these guys spend all off season doing what they do. So it's just going to be tough as he continues to adjust and find consistency until he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger thing is just, he got tattooed. Like, he had 10 hard hit balls. That's more than they as a team had yesterday in total off of Cleveland pitching. And yesterday wasn't a very good day. I mean, it was line drives. A lot of times, sometimes they were lucky and it was line drives at people. But when stuff was in the zone or near the zone, it was his whiffs were up, which is a positive sign. But like anything that was got a hold of, guys were teeing off on. I don't know if they were just seeing it cleanly. Just to go back to release point, that first year side note was 59 degrees. You don't have to comment below. So it's 59. It's been 51 the last 2 years, but they were seeing it very clearly and just unloading. And yeah, Ohtani's Ohtani. So it's a different beast, but like, even Gavin only had 4 or 5 hard hit balls yesterday. So the 10 is a lot because when you're looking at the total number of players, faced in that means, he allowed 10 base runners, 15 outs at 25. That means almost half the time a guy came to plate, they tattooed the ball. So you're just not going to be successful if that's what's happening. I still have tons of faith in Tanner. He is working on things. But yeah, for Tanner and Gavin, we talked last start about the encouragement, and we kind of came back with this one. It's like, okay, this is the same story. Like, we're kind of locked into this roller coaster, which is why it's amazing that, hey, if the playoffs started today, this team would still be in it, because you and I spent this offseason talking about 2 Cy Young candidates. Instead, we've got 2 guys who will not be in that discussion. I think we can pretty safely say. So it's the ups and the downs. There's a lot of positives with certain players in this game as well that we'll have to get into. But yeah, they've done. It was a hard game.
It's the Dodgers. It is the Dodgers, and like we talked about yesterday about where the barometer is here. The Dodgers are up here. The Guardians, they're here. That's what you're realistic about. It's a litmus test, and it's a snapshot of the season too. It's not reflective of who they are as a team all year, but it's reflective of where they're at in terms of where they're going and where the Dodgers have been. And that's probably not going to change because we know where the Guardians' limitations are in terms of the roster they currently have and everything else that goes along with that. And
if there's more consistency, I would 100% agree with you. But I think the general inconsistency offensively, pitching, all of that makes me be like, you can't just say it's the Dodgers because we haven't seen it. We've seen these same struggles against bad teams as well.
Yeah, they've been hyper inconsistent this year, and that's the hard part. Is this team just has not been consistent all year, and every piece of the pie, every puzzle piece of this organization this year, just hasn't been consistent. Everybody's taken their turn. All right. Speaking of all the puzzle pieces to the roster, when is the right time to make roster moves? Where are the Guardians roster? Where is it going? Who's coming? Who's going? And when should they make moves? We'll get into that next on today's Locked On Guardians. Monarch money. If you ever lost track of your spending, I do all the time. Dining, shopping, entertainment. It's very easy to lose track, especially when you're not paying in cash anymore. That is where Monarch Money comes in. They are your personal CFO. They give you full visibility and control of your finances. The visibility part is key for me. I have to see it in front of me. It's not just a budgeting app. It is a total financial command center. You can track every single account that you have, all of your investments and spending from just one place. So if you have the means to do so, you can stop just managing money and start thinking about it in terms of building your wealth, building that safety net, meeting goals. If you want to go on that vacation, if you've got kids who are playing sports, if you want to do something new, if you want to take on a new hobby, if you want to invest some money and take some chances there, all that stuff can be done with Monarch Money. Easy collaboration. You can do it by yourself. You can do it with partners, and it makes the conversation a lot easier and easier to track. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Everybody wants changes, Jeff. Everybody wants to change. If you could change, I can change. Everybody can change. Comment the quote from that below. We had a Ric Flair reference. Now we've got a boxing reference. I'll give the hint away to that one. Everybody is so focused on call up DeLauter, call up Kayfus, and there's just there are some holes in this roster, and I think you do have to ask yourself to a point. Yeah, I think you do have to ask yourself to a point, you have to be patient, but you also have to recognize, okay, when things aren't working, when can we make the call to make moves? When does it make sense? And the DeLauter thing, I'll say this, I've talked to a lot of people the last couple of days about this. He's just getting his season started. He played a couple games in Arizona. He's only played 2 games in a row. So right now, at the most, he's playing 2 games and taking a game off.
Did he play at all in spring training? Weren't we on a watch for him because he just didn't appear?
He never played.
Zero spring training.
Yeah, they claimed in spring training that as soon as he was about ready to appear in games is when he had the oblique issue or the whatever it was, the core muscle
hernia,
issue.
Right? Wasn't it
Yeah, well, they had a couple guys with hernias, Franco Alamon, whatever.
Maybe it's Alamon hernia. I'm confused.
Yeah. So DeLauter's played 6 games in the minors so far this year. So that's not really it's not even a readiness issue with him right now in terms of could he help his team? Would he be a better option? I think the answer is obviously yes. He's probably a better option right now than Nolan Jones and certainly John Kenzie Noel. But for DeLauter, it's more of he's got to prove he's healthy, but it's an endurance thing too. He's playing 2 games and he's sitting a game. I know you're saying, well, they can just platoon him up here and do that. And they certainly could, but I think it's better for him to get his feet under him in AAA if you really are wanting him to impact the team this year. The CJ Kayfus thing, it's a weird fit.
How well Will Wilson was hitting in AAA. Remember how well Lane Thompson was hitting in AAA? It's not a direct 1-to-1.
It's not, but I also don't want to compare DeLauter and Kayfus to Will Wilson because
you can compare him to Lane Thomas, who's had major league success over multiple years.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. That's the problem with early season injuries, spring training injuries and early season injuries. Is you get through spring training or you don't, and you are trying to rehab, get healthy, and get your timing back. And it just feels like you're playing catch up the entire year. How many times do we see Jason Kipnis get hurt in spring training and he comes back and he's just constantly it just feels like you're running uphill in water trying to catch up the entire season. So I do worry that about Lane Thomas this year. But as far as right field goes, they're going to have a long runway with Nolan Jones because he doesn't have options. Although you could make a case that let's just say hypothetically they DFA'd Nolan Jones today. Is anybody claiming him? Be honest. Is anybody claiming Nolan Jones?
I mean, because there's a team that's we can fix him, right? Cleveland's been very poor at what Nolan Jones isn't good at. That's Yandy Diaz went to Tampa and figured it out. Nolan Jones would get claimed by Tampa and turn into an all-star. What they do well is what Nolan Jones needs. So
because Yandy Diaz made contact and couldn't hit fly balls. Nolan Jones hits fly balls, but can't make contact.
Yeah, they're good at swing adjustments.
But it's a different profile.
He can be a 4th outfielder. It's not like he needs to be, he can play all 3 spots. He's got a strong arm. He
shouldn't play center. He shouldn't play it.
But he can do it in a pinch. I agree with you. But it's he's fine as your 4th outfielder. I don't think you have to rush to cut him. I don't think you worry about that. Noel's got an option. You can send him down. I think basically a lot of this comes down to if the latter had been healthy, if someone had been doing it more consistently. We've only had a small sample, and CJ Kayfus, as much as people don't want to hear it, is struggling with command in the zone, right? He's still there's a lot of expanding his zone, and that's going to get picked on at the higher level. Like, I know
he doesn't
people
have
want
great contact rates,
Yeah.
and he does chase a little bit. I mean, but in the same vein, like Nolan Jones doesn't chase, but he doesn't make any contact either.
But
And
there's a world where
and
Kayfus is going to
Kayfus's
do exactly the same thing.
I would say Kayfus probably has a better chance to make contact than
Yeah,
Nolan
overall, but
Jones.
I could
But
see him being
he'll
similar.
chase more. He'll chase more. So you'll have, you'll probably get less walks out of Kayfus than you do Jones. But that's the thing with Jones. Like, that's the only thing he can do right now is help you with walks. And you're not going to play you wouldn't play Kayfus against lefties. And the other issue there is it doesn't make sense to have Sheeman and Thomas and Martinez and Quan and Jones and Kayfus, because Kayfus isn't going to play first base because Carlos Santana is back at first base, and B is like the second best hitter on the team right now, and you have Manzardo who's struggling. The other option would be to send Manzardo down to let him figure things out, because he's the one who's really struggling right now too, along with Jones. That's the thing that hurts the most to me, is that you're not getting anything out of right field. Second base is kind of dog water too, outside of Sheem hit the home run in this game. Bo Naylor, they're trying to hit him second, and
Not great.
the only benefit of Bo Naylor hitting second is he works long at bats, so he sees a lot of pitches in front of Jose, which great, but he's not doing a whole lot with it. So you got three spots where you're basically getting nothing offensively, and
nothing
center
out
field,
of your DH.
With Manzardo struggling. This team needs Jose, who's got a 20-game hitting streak. He's on a heater. You got Santana, who's hitting great right now. I know Quan's been a little up and down lately, but you got those three guys. You need Manzardo to be your fourth consistent hitter, and he just isn't right now. And that was what they were kind of counting on when they traded Naylor, was that Manzardo would step in and elevate a little bit, and he did in April, but he hasn't in May. And I think, again, like Tanner Bibee, these guys are works in progress, and Manzardo has even less reps than Bibee at this point. So you're still going through growing pains with him, the same ones you'd go through with CJ Kayfus. Like, you could make the argument and say, gotta call up Kayfus, gotta call up DeLauter. You're still going to go through those growing pains with those guys. They're not going to come in tomorrow and save the offense and hit like Jim Thome or Albert Bell or Manny Ramirez. These guys aren't that. I'm not saying you shouldn't make a change. And the other problem is too, CJ Kayfus is not an outfielder. Like, he's played outfield, but Nolan Jones actually is a good right fielder. He's a good enough outfielder.
Limited range, good arm, but they're all about the strong
great
arm and limited range. Like,
Kayfus is not going to match that. Kayfus not only doesn't have the same doesn't have range, he also doesn't have Jones's arm. He doesn't have Noel's arm. He doesn't have Lane Thomas's arm. I don't think he has Quan's arm. So you're limited both ways there. It's not a perfect fit. And you could say, well, they need more offense, and they absolutely do. But I'm not saying if they made the move tomorrow, I wouldn't be against that. I'm just saying
it's not a panacea. It doesn't fix everything.
Right. And I know a lot of people might be saying, well, this isn't working either. Why keep doing the same thing over and over? Because as much as people don't want to hear this, you're still looking at the future for guys like Kayfus and DeLauter. You're still trying to get the most out of them long term. So as much as people want to press the button and break glass case of emergency and bring those guys out today, unfortunately, the Guardians are thinking big picture, and big picture says it's not ideal to bring these guys up tomorrow. It's more ideal to have them ready for the long haul, get the most out of them. For DeLauter, though, that might be, who knows how long that might be, because by the time he comes up and makes his debut, he could have, sprained another foot or torn a ligament or God knows what. He might get hurt on the way to Progressive Field if he ever got called up.
I think the bigger thing, honestly, is as much as we're, want to rush and do that, the bigger problem is in the last 30 days, Quan has a 700 OPS. He's scuffled. Kyle Manzardo's at a 656. I love what Angel's done, but he's at a 570. Gabby's at a 554. Like, Ramirez is a 983. Santana's a 914. They've been a two-hitter team. And then they put a black hole between them. I love Kyle Manzardo. It's not been great of late. Let's be very honest with it. And there'll be ups and downs. Like, everyone wanted us to cut Carlos Santana after the month of April. So at some point he's going to come back to earth, and hopefully Manzardo will rebound. But it's like, unfortunately, right now it's a situation where a lot of guys have gone cold at the same time, and it just makes those holes even bigger. And going and grabbing the hot bat was the idea with Will Wilson. That hasn't worked out. Like going and adding.
Well, but again,
player.
Will Wilson is not the same as those other guys. Will
No,
Wilson,
I know, but
after his first year, wasn't a prospect. Those guys are still prospects.
Yes, no, I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, you can't equate. I guess what I'm not phrasing well is you can't equate a hot bat's going to just necessarily translate because the guy's playing well. That's just what I'm trying to say. Like that, that we can't say that. Owen Miller was a similar rated prospect to CJ Kayfus at the time that he was called up, and he was hitting 400 in AAA, and everyone was a top 15-ish prospect guy. Kayfus was in the 8 to 15 range most places. That's like where Miller was.
I'm not thinking about ranking. I'm thinking more about overall long term.
I mean, yeah, I think Kayfus is higher overall, but just like in terms of ranking, and everyone thought Owen Miller was going to work. It's like, and that's not to say that CJ Kayfus can't come up, and I do think he'll get an opportunity hopefully this year. But yeah, it's going to be. None of these guys can fit. Chase DeLauter can't play 7 spots. They need Stephen Kwan to find a little more of that consistency. Manzardo to stop swinging at everything. Martinez to, you got a lot of guys. Lane Thomas has been atrocious. Like, yeah, it's not great. Let's be very honest. And hey, they still scored 5 runs today in spite of it. So some things are going well.
Yeah, the offense wasn't really the problem. I mean, they added runs late in this one. The offense wasn't the issue. This issue was Tanner had a bad inning and then a bad couple of batters in another inning, and
the bullpen
wasn't good.
Didn't do their job.
And overall, again, the issue here is consistency. Last year, they made the playoffs despite a terrible rotation because of a great bullpen, and the offense was pretty steady most of the year, even though the performances fluctuated. Like every month, it felt like you had somebody different getting hot. It was Josh Naylor, and then it was Tyler Freeman, and then it was Kwan, and then it was David Fry, and then Noel for a little bit. Like you had different guys elevating each month, and right now, the only guy elevating is Jose, and right now Santana, and after that, it's not. So inconsistency is where this team needs to figure things out, and that's a lot easier said than done. I'll be very honest. So, all right. We do have to talk about a reinforcement coming soon. Shane Bieber back on the mound, as is Tristan McKenzie. As a footnote more than anything else. But when is Shane Bieber coming back? What's the plan for his rehab? And who is going to pitch in the finale opposite Clayton Kershaw? That is coming up on the rest of this episode of Locked On Guardians. Hey, make sure you're downloading daily on audio, Spotify, Apple, Overcast. Make sure you're getting those sent right to your feed so you never miss an episode. And on YouTube as well, hit the bell so you get reaction videos, breaking news videos, regular episodes, and the MLB Squad Show, which is coming out today as well. You're going to want to get all that, so make sure you're not missing any episodes that come into your Locked On Guardians feed from us or, anywhere else throughout the Locked On MLB and Locked On Network. All right, Jeff, so let's start off with today's pitching matchup. As of recording this on Tuesday night, we don't know exactly who is pitching for the Guardians opposite Clayton Kershaw, but someone's going to get an opportunity to do something fun and say they got to pitch on the opposite side of him. Right now, it could be Colby Allard. It could be a bullpen game. It could be Parker Messick. He is the guy who is lined up to pitch today for Columbus in Rochester, New York. Not really a far flight back to Cleveland. That should be pretty easy if that's the call they want to make for him to make his debut. I will say the challenging thing about that is they could use Ben Lively's 40-man spot to add Parker Messick because he isn't currently on the 40. However, as everydayer fever dog Andrew Kinsman points out, David Fry is closing in on his window to come back on the roster, and they'll have to have a roster spot for him. There's Cody Bolton. So there's options, but I'm just saying, like, these are things
there's a lot of options.
Yeah, like Ben Lively, king of options that the Guardians have. Yeah, there's still some fodder left for sure. Ciccone, if you didn't hear, Ciccone's got a groin tweak or something, and they're pushing him back
in his groin.
Yeah, so they're hoping that he just has to be pushed back and nothing further happens there. God, this team just already feels snake bitten. It already does. Like, it's just, I don't know. It just feels snake. Like, again, this is why you cannot trade any of your pitching depth. Like, all offseason, people were talking about trading certain pitchers, and it's like they had to add pitchers. And we wanted to trade Hunter Gaddis. God, could you imagine that? How many times this offseason, Jeff, did I say trade Hunter Gaddis for this player? I wanted to trade Hunter Gaddis to Arizona for for. I don't
We
remember.
got into it for Taylor Ward, where I'm like, you can't. His Savant page is too red. We can't do this for a year and a half. I remember our fight on Taylor Ward because it was weird because I'm the Taylor Ward guy, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, and if they trade Hunter, I mean, I know Gaddis get the home run in this game, but
Yeah,
if they had traded him, boy, it would be a disaster if they did, because he's really been their best reliever this year. He's been the most consistent reliever, I should say, even though Cade Smith has kind of got it back lately. But God, that would be a disaster if they didn't have him right now. So yeah, we'll see who pitches. Hopefully Cicconi's okay. Again, this is why the Guardians' focus this offseason was pitching depth, and it's already being battered a little bit. Hopefully Ciccone is okay. But I'd be interested to watch Parker Messick, but I also would be like, wow, you're making Parker Messick debut against the Dodgers. That's great.
yeah. I feel like
your first batter, Shohei Ohtani. Oh, cool.
Have fun.
Yeah, good luck to you. Don't throw a fastball.
I feel like if it was another team, maybe they would actually do Messick because it's one start. What's it really matter in the grand scheme of service time?
Don't throw him to the Wolves. Yeah.
But I don't think you want to throw him to the Wolves. So I feel like, it's probably going to be like a what I'm expecting. What I'm expecting is, but and then the other side of it too is, again, since they played those 2 games Thursday, they're up to what now, like 9 games in 8 days. Like the team is a little spent. They need that off day.
Yeah,
but I feel like
Monday too.
Yeah, I feel like we might see potentially Junis in the first, and then you go to.
Well, he pitched tonight. How many innings can he? He threw 21 pitches, I guess.
I know, but 1 inning. You go Junis for 1 inning, so the lineup is set for a righty, and then you go to Allard as the lefty and see if they adjust back. The old opener approach.
I don't know if does that really matter against the Dodgers. Let's be honest. Like,
you might as well take every possible advantage you can. The other side of it is like do anything you can. If you get, then let's at least line it up in a way. That's what Cincinnati did to Cleveland. I know Cleveland is not the Dodgers lineup, but do what you can.
I guess. I don't know. I kind of feel like it just doesn't matter, but in that terms, like when it's Tanner or Gavin or Luis Ortiz, at least you're like, okay, this is good. But when it comes to our options are Colby Allard, Jacob Junis, or Parker Messick, I don't think it really matters which way you go in that direction. But yeah, I mean, on the other hand, Parker Messick, knowing what we know about him, he might want the challenge, but who knows? Shane Bieber is going to pitch this week in Arizona. He is rehabbing. So a couple clarifications on that. The rehab time, I don't believe, I'm sure Fever Dog, our buddy Andrew, can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I don't believe your rehab time 30 days for pitchers starts until you go to an affiliate. Right. So as long as you're in Arizona in the complex league, that clock doesn't start. But once you get to an affiliate, that 30-day clock starts. So that gives them roughly 5 or 6 outings in an affiliate, depending on how you spread it out. Our everydayer and friend and host of the Facebook Official Guardians Facebook group, fan group, gave me a good piece here about David Yoder gave me a good piece about how many innings that Matt Boyd threw last year. So this was the structure last year for him. It was, I believe, 3 innings in a complex league game last year. And then he went 4 innings in Akron, 5 innings in Akron, 4 innings in Columbus, 5 innings in Columbus. Then he was up. I would probably guess the clock will be a little bit slower on Shane Bieber because last year was kind of a shot in the dark desperation with Matt Boyd versus a whole plan ahead of time because they didn't sign until like June, right? That was just kind of a let's see if this works, right? Mm-hmm. And that whereas Bieber, this was a long-term decision. This is about his long-term health too. I would guess the progression will be a little bit slower for Shane Bieber. I would bet like 1 or 2 innings max in his debut, and I would probably bet he'll throw at least 2 or 3 outings in Arizona before he goes to an affiliate. And then from there he'll need 4 or 5 outings.
No, I agree. It's what makes the most sense. Double checking. Yeah, it does not start till you go to an affiliate, so it's going to be the slow play. He is going to not. He'll get his 30 days after he gets the call up, but yeah, Matt Boyd has always been my benchmark for this as well, and that's what I assume we'll kind of see in terms of Bieber and
I would just guess a little bit slower than Boyd. That's all.
So Fry will start kind of the guys coming off the 60-man. So you'll have Fry, I think, will be the first guy, undoubtedly. And you'll have Bieber.
Add Lively.
Yeah, Lively. You'll have Bieber. You'll have Stefan. You'll eventually have means, we'll start seeing those guys start to click off of that list and click in. And more depth. You never have. I mean, and we didn't really talk about Cantillo getting sent to AAA for more depth in the starting pitching. Yeah. The never-ending need for pitching depth.
Yeah, never-ending pitching depth, never-ending need to churn the roster, all that good stuff. All right, we'll be back with you tomorrow. We will talk about Game 3, Dodgers versus Guardians, Clayton Kershaw versus whoever at this point. Well, I don't know. Could be Jeff. I don't know. What are you doing tomorrow,
It's
Jeff?
not me. It's not me.
Yeah, it's not Jeff. Okay.
No. It would be ugly. It would last one pitch, and then it'd be like, you go.
That's also assuming they play, because the forecast, shocking, if the day ends in Y, the forecast is rain in Cleveland or midges. That's the forecast in Cleveland right now. I think the midges are bringing rain.
I think it's actually the rain that brings the midges, right? Isn't that probably more the biological
the lake? I don't know. Whatever. Stop getting all scientific and technical on me here. All right. It's been a long day. It's been a long episode.
It has.
Listen, I really just didn't want to get swept by the Dodgers, but I think I was telling our Locked On Dodgers host today, Jeff Snyder, I was like, I'll be happy if the Guardians just win one of these games. He said, I'll be happy if they don't. And I was like, wow, that's where you guys are at right now. Sleep, everybody.
That's a very Dodger statement. That is the fan base. Guess what? They're still the second in the wild card overall right now. That's where it is in the American League. That's where his team is. They've had their ups. They've had their downs. I'm glad when this 10-game streak comes to an end. They've at least won 4 out of the 10, theoretically. And that's all I would have probably asked for at the start. So, I'm still going to do the glass half full.
You got the Yankees coming up next. Oh, joy. All right. Yeah, we're back tomorrow. Guardians, Dodgers, Game 3. Plan for second base for the rest of the year. We'll talk about the impact of Juan Brito's injury, as well as Travis Bazzana and Will Wilson and Daniel Steeman and Aljo Martinez, and how that all plays out the rest of the year for the Guardians. So come back for that.
It's second base. It's I'll have some thoughts.
The middle infield was once the biggest depth of the organization. Now it's.
And hey, before they get the Yankees, they at least get the Los Angeles Angels, and hopefully it's revenge time, right? Thank you all for joining us. Remember to rate and review, download daily, do your part. It all helps. We have you covered from all levels. Big shout out to all of our everydayers, and go Guardians, go.
Woo!